Fourth wall running. A term I just came up with to describe a level of fourth wall shattering power that blurs the lines between fiction and reality. Something these two characters, and frankly the episode they're in, love to do a lot of. So might as well sum it up in one word because you'll probably hear it a lot in this review. On to the video. Ladies and gents, whether you click on this video as a diehard death metal fan or a more casual viewer, you probably thought this episode was amazing. Hell, maybe you deem it the 1v1 episode to match the colossal hype energy brought by Bow's Eggman, because let me tell you, that one had a mountain of details and easter eggs I loved to delve into back then, and this infinity piercing match will be no different. I'm Uncle Krypton, like and subscribe for more stuff, and without further ado, let's get it. God, I am so happy they brought back the shared theme and connections introduction. Really helps introduce these characters to the probably many unfamiliar with them. On the topic of first impressions, it is really clever to introduce Simon by first placing the spotlight on Kamina before pulling the rug underneath your feet, exactly like the first 8 episodes of season 1 did. They even got a quiet and chill elevator-esque music playing in the background, which was really fitting for the shy and introverted kid Simon is introduced as, before character development was forcefully thrust upon him after Kamina's death, which the team does a great job at paying respect and importance to. They clearly had a lot of fun with the other franchises. They used to delve into certain concepts like the Iri Uzumaki for the inward spiral or Giro Zeppeli's infinite spinning trick for the outward spiral. And props for what's easily the funniest number reveal on the show. Yes, even beating SpongeBob on that too. Shame they immediately specified it to be immeasurable right after though, because if you were busy laughing at that, you might have missed that both Simon and his opponent's speeds go beyond numbers. And on that front, I'm actually quite fond of how they explained dimensional power scaling. It felt digestible enough as a first for the show. It got fun background cameos too, like Build Cypher, Mr. Game & Watch, Infinite and Springtrap for the 3D stuff? Why, because it debuted in FNAF 3? Doesn't matter, it's another FNAF reference, so my Junko Trap agenda stays strong. I know I stopped talking about the humor in these breakdowns since they removed the visual gags, but there's something about Weeds just ignoring boomstick comments about the sheer ridiculousness of Spyro energy that just works for me, man. And we then end on a very beautiful note that flips the "so every star is our enemy" from the start of the show into an awful note for the future. As a big Gurren Lagann fan, no complaints, it's a pretty much perfect breakdown. Regarding the other GL, however, no, nothing negative, I just wanted to catch your attention. Lots of animated comic book panels as expected for Mr. Literally Got Adapted Once, but they're also beautifully edited as usual, so it's basically like a motion graphic novel or something. Quite a shift to go from the serious dramatic music for Al spiraling into madness to silly super French coded trumpets to delve into the Lantern's goofily overpowered power wings. Then we go back into the sci-fi epicness as we delve into some neatly explained emotional spectrum stuff. Emotional spectrums. Good stuff. I appreciate they acknowledge the seriousness of Kyle's girlfriend's fate and the unfortunate trend it spawned, in a similar manner to how they delve into Hank Pym's mental breakdown. Kyle's own character arc was very nicely presented, going for him being randomly chosen for a ring, rebuilding the Green Lantern Corps, fighting Al himself, doing the impossible, defeating his self-doubt, and end up distributing rings after forming his own Lantern Corps. Instead of embracing and channeling his full power like Simon, it was ultimately too much for Kyle, as he gave it up and split it amongst his friends, which also serves as clever foreshadowing for his autoversal side of things kinda falling short by comparison, or well, how it got interpreted as such. I love how a mountain being split in half went from being a way to end things in one fight to the first thing you see in another. Neat foreshadowing for how big things will get later.
Alright, I'm not rusty at all.
Hey dude, Green Lantern Officer Kyle Rayner here. Ring says you've got a Class A galactic super weapon, whatever that is.
This might sound like the weirdest praise ever, but this might just be the best starting establishing lines for both characters before the fight starts. With Simon, we established that he hasn't used spiral energy for a while, probably due to all the paperwork he's been doing post time skip, but he's still very much got it. With Kyle, we immediately established to his good cop attitude. You know, the hey, I'm not like other officers buddy vibe. Very chill, calls him dude, he's such a dork that he makes the ring write stuff on a scroll as if it really was a paper he's been sent to read. You know, in general, both combatants are given a lot of dialogue in this animation, which is not too common for death battles, but god, it works so well here. Brandon Acosta's debuting performance on the show brings a lot of, I wanna call, gentle strength. Like an hyped up fanboy trying to put up a manly act, but he's just so gosh darn happy to be here, damn it. Gurren Lagann, aka Giorno, does a great job playing Simon too. I particularly like the echoing effect they added whenever he talks from the mech, or the determined spunk during close-ups. And yes, obvious Ben Lantern callback is obvious. Really curious which Green Lantern will try to rain on Yuri Lowenthal's parade next. Hashtag all lanterns are bastards.
Just who the hell do you think you are? Very interesting to have the space cop hold more of an advantage on Earth, while the guy who was literally born underground has a better time in space. Just a fun detail to point out. Speaking of details, however, it's very true to both characters that the creativity of Hal Jordan's constructs pales in comparison to Kyle's. They even gave the latter some comic booky dots as a nod to his background as a comic book artist. Let's do a quick rundown. Green Lantern power is used to create a pixelated Barlog, the only sprite in this entire fight by the way, an hilariously sudden PGA Tiger Woods to separate Lagann from Gurren, orange constructs used to create a Luigi's Mansion Poltergeist to greedily suck up missiles, yellow light to create a fearsome Shenron, red lantern light to angrily headbutt Gurren with a Monster Hunter Banbaro horns? Really selling Kyle Rayner as a massive video game / anime nerd. Too bad he didn't know about this tampos sealing his fate right then and there. Also, those in the background are indeed a squirrel and a rabbit inserted as an easter egg from the animator Zach Watkins, who does an amazing job alongside the guest animators during this whole fight. I want to say it now because I might as well say it for every single frame. That's how gorgeous this whole thing is. That's nothing! My drill will pierce the heavens!
Since Kyle taking away Gurren is kinda like seeing Kamina being taken away from him, Simon rightfully doesn't dig that very much as he follows the lantern into space. And this is where my only criticism for this episode comes in. Things go by quick, like really freaking fast, to the point where you almost don't have time to fully digest how crazy things are getting. Keyword being almost. I know end-on fights can't usually last too long, and I fully believe it can be a reference to how Gurren Lagann itself escalates things, but still, a little bit more breathing room moments before the super toppa Gurren Lagann would have been nice. Wait, what's that noise? Do you guys hear it too? It almost sounds like it almost sounds like there's a forget Doomslayer outrunning the rocket. This whole segment right here carries almost as many layers as the Multiverse Labyrinth. It's yet another giant fella trying to quote step on loser, every face on the tengen toppa being shocked when that turns out unsuccessful, them exchanging lyrics straight out of Gurren Lagann's Libera Me from Hell in a very did we just become best friends type of way.
Lantern, we do the impossible.
See the invisible.
Touch the untouchable.
Break the unbreakable.
If you ain't know,
now you know!
Which was both awesome and adorable. We don't get a full confirmation of this Kyle being a Gurren Lagann fan, but I do get the vibe that he spiritually, deep down, knows what Simon's whole deal is about, probably because of the legally distinct Gurren he once summoned. He's probably thinking, oh yeah, this is like that one anime I saw the whole time, and that's fantastic. Speaking of his creations, my god, the Superman construct. Where to even begin? First things first, it combines Kyle's adoration for comics and Superman with his love for giant robots,
because this isn't just any Superman, mind you, it's the Thought Robot Superman. Yeah, the Cosmic Armor one. The fourth wall runner Superman himself. An extremely unlikely design to ever be described as adorable, but hey, does Kyle strike you as someone who cares about likelihood? Okay, Simon beat him on that front too, but you get my point. This guy is adorable. I love how DCAU inspired it looks, since that's the only franchise Kyle has ever been in outside the comics, or Kyle being the third person on that battle to immediately think of calling Superman to get out of trouble, or his grin as he realizes the peakiness of what he just constructed, or the House of L logo fused into the White Lantern one, or Simon's reaction, or Blue Lantern's shield and Green Lantern sword to homage Wonder Woman, Red Lantern napalm as a stand-in for laser eyes, Indigo Lantern portals to compassionately send missiles away, just layers upon layers upon layers of peakness in this one segment. Both the writers and the animators cooked on a cosmic scale, man. And then a wild source wall appears.
I'm Simone the Digger! If there's a wall in my way, I'll smash it down!
Now, if you remember my prediction video, I cited the idea of Simon drilling through the source wall as the potential holy shit crossover moment for this episode. The fight proper did do that, but in a very interesting way. Instead of Kyle summoning his own rendition of the structure, describing it as the mysterious border of DC cosmology, creating plenty of holy shit potential even for mainstream audiences as Simon drills through it anyway, the wall is just there and Simon instinctively goes full drill mode at the mere sight of a space wall that Kyle wasn't even responsible for summoning. It honestly ends up being accidentally kind of funny in a way, like Simon doesn't even know the sheer scale of what he just walked through, or for honestly no real reason, offering no advantage whatsoever, he just drilled through it. It feels oddly in character to the spirit of Gurren Lagann, but the sheer lack of gravitas about it makes it awesomely funny instead of funnily awesome, if that makes sense. It's ignorant, you might say. Hell, I even like how the source just kicks both of them out later, because they did kinda commit the equivalent of breaking into God's house to continue a scuffle. Not to mention the life equation encompassing the entire background regardless of how nonsensically big things get from now on. Really selling that we reach the size doesn't matter point. All the time, Simon drilling through a barrier that separates the DC universe from the one the freaking writers live in also works as an amazing nod to his audio drama self fusing with a fictional version that became real. Again, layers upon layers of fourth wall running shit going on here.
Stop fighting. Think about your fear of death, your love of your friends, your compassion for me, your hope for the future. Choose life.
An aspect I haven't really seen many being praised at all by anyone is how perfectly this animation conveys Kyle Rayner's compassion. It starts out kindly asking Simon to hand over the mech due to protocol, disarms him and flies off without hurting him, plays defense for a good chunk of this fight, and tries to persuade Simon into stop fighting instead of potentially dying. Very confident of your chances there, Kyle, but notice how he brings up all the emotional spectrum except anger and willpower? That's because he probably figured out that imbuing Simon with those would be like fighting fire with gasoline. And yet...
Have faith in the Simon that believes in you. Super tengen toppa Gurren Lagann!
Shifting from white to black as Kamina's memory bricks Simon out of the equation exactly like he did with the labyrinth, Simon enters the Super Tengen Toppa Gurren Lagann with a different but equally impactful framing from the source material. This form is confirmed by the creators to be Kamina himself reincarnated, so it's as if Kamina emotionally resurrected himself in this very moment to help Simon against the bully, meaning that both cosmic heroes ended up summoning their caped up idols in this fight. And that's great. After flashing a smile that maybe conveys a bit too much enthusiasm for the situation, Simon's passion for drills ultimately ends up infecting Kyle's own omnipotent creativity, exactly like he did with Anti-Spiral, as he creates, a strong contender for the coolest attack in the show's history as an original invention, mind you. They are fourth wall running so hard you can actually see the names of crew members on the freaking drills. My brother in Christ, y'all are busy into the fucking end credits. If you freeze frame, you can even see a single frame of them butting heads like the promotional art made for this episode, with an empty space that resembles Carmina's pointed up finger, which, let's be honest, also was probably 1% intentional. But all good things must come to an end, and this includes Pickness too. After a perfect visualization of what these two love doing the most, aka shattering infinity, notice how it cracks in the shape of a spiral though, Segata Sanshiro kicks them out of the source, which makes me less think that he triumphed against Chuck Norris, but more so that the latter is just waiting for him on the other side of reality to keep things going. Like I said, they did kinda break into God's house here.
The super weapon wasn't your mech, it was me.
I don't care what any of y'all say, this is possibly the hardest response ever given by a death battle combatant in the history of ever. Like, the delivery, pose, animation, the simple awesomeness of it all, God, even Kyle respects it.
Then, Simon, I'm taking you in brightest day, in blackest night. No evil shall escape my sight.
Don't let the simple Fitzcalf's finale, which references Lord Genome in location and Anti-Spiral in spirit, distract you from them still warping reality with their hands alone, like Kyle punching Simon into a manga, or the latter punching Kyle into a comic book, in a very Spider-Versely fashion.
Let those who worship evil's might beware my power!
We then get Kyle reciting the possibly best recited in the history of DC adaptations, Green Lantern Oath, in a way that really made me question who was gonna win, which is when you know that battle has done an amazing job, in case everything I said so far didn't convey that already.
Green Lantern fly!
Oh my god, it's all over the screen. It's white everywhere, and I'm not talking about the life equation. The vocal performances, the different shades of green colliding, the stars are forming, as Simon freaking reality punches him back into Green Lantern form, borrowing a move from White Lantern's own playbook. You cannot tell me that the way these shots are framed wasn't a JJK reference. And then, the other thing I wish listed on my prediction video happens. Simon becomes a Green Lantern. Or does he? You see, what I always meant but I never properly elaborated on was specifically the idea of Kyle even just receiving the offer of becoming a Lantern, fully tapping into that awesome crossover aspects that the best death battles do. But there's been quite a split in the community on whether Simon accepted such offer or not. On one end, you got folks interpreting
Just who the hell do you think I am?
as, you think I'm stupid? Of course I want a cool ring, gimme. And then you got folks interpreted as, you think I'm stupid? I never become a cop, keep it. Because of the latter's disdain for authority. Now, as a big fan of this series and character, I wanna point out Simon hates tyranny in particular, not just authority in general. Hell, he literally became the head of mankind after killing a tyrant. My boy is all about responsibility. But being a space cop is also understandably a different thing entirely. And he wasn't exactly thrilled of his leadership position in canon either. So you know what? I actually love the fact that they leave it up to interpretation, because I can honestly see both scenarios being true to the character. On the topic of being amazing, Simon the Digger fucking won. This has been my preferred outcome since I heard of this matchup years ago, and I kinda had made peace with the fact that they were never gonna have a DC Herald lose against a non-Marvel fella. Spawn threw down a few bricks of that pessimism, but Simon fully broke through it. Like, guys, This is fucking insane. He dethroned SpongeBob's fastest calculable speed feat, drilled through the freaking source wall, triumphed against a practically invincible DC Herald, something Archie, Sonic and fucking Alien X failed to do, broke Anime's 11 years old losing streak against comic books, and potentially became a Green Lantern, meaning we low-key traded a DC Herald for another. Like, if that battle street cred was a thing, Simon's records just skyrocketed right next to the freaking source wall. But I'ma be fair on the other side too, there is some stuff worth criticizing a bit in the ending analysis for why they went for this outcome rather than on something else. For starters, there was oddly zero mention of Kyle potentially being able to use orange light and steal/absorb Simon's soul. Like, he never showed any specific resistance to soul stuff, and it would be nice if they said something like, I don't know, oh, but Kyle would never do that in character as a first move, or Simon's conceptual regeneration includes the soul too, which I deem both equally valid if I acknowledge them at least. And I was weirded out by Kyle not even getting imagination. Like, 99% reaction videos I watched, including people that discovered Kyle in this very episode, took it for granted that he was gonna take at least that. Now, what I think happened is that by imagination, they actually meant powers/X, which do make perfect sense as a tie. No clue why they didn't simply split the two categories up, maybe miscommunication between editors, I don't know. The end result screen seems to confirm that to be the original intent. You could also flip it and say that Kyle's imagination being superior doesn't mean much when Simon could create and absorb everything just as effectively, but I'm gonna stand by the fact that this part could have used some polishing. That said though, no, they did not nerf the DC universe. They simply said that Kyle's base power would affect only 12.3 dimensional stuff, without the life equation, which would put him at out-reversal. Not every herald scales to the entire cosmology, you know? We can't all be Superman. And the way they phrase things at the end do sorta sound like an unironic, but he beats people stronger than him every single day. But they also do say that Simon fused with a real-life version of himself without any drawbacks, compared to the fourth wall running power of the equation being too much for Kyle to properly handle on his own. Which I did find to be a neat and clever distinction. But ok, I hear you say, if they accepted the potentially no limits growth for Simon, why not for Azura? And to that I say, yeah, you're probably right. No manga for Azura since it contradicts the source, but Kratos gets cookbook scaling, get out of here. Sometimes your favorite web series simply delivers a stinker, and that's okay. There's also different researchers and writers for every, so hey, what can you do? As I said in my reaction, I'm honestly over that debacle now, but I cannot go to sleep soundly without sharing this extra tidbit posted by the storyboarder. Kyle tries to pull a time ha, but Simon goes nah with his temporarily omnidirectional missiles, bringing him back into the presence after shouting, "Nice complex ability, dipshit, check this shit out." That line and this whole segment were obviously just for memes as confirmed by the creator, but I do struggle to tell you if I actually wanted this scene to be integrated or not. Another bonus segment has Simon perish in extremely gnarly fashion, trusting Kyle with a core drill. Then a final third one showcases a 0.0001% chance of Simon absorbing Kyle's ring, turning him back into a civilian as we get White Lantern Simon, confusing them both as Kyle is like, dude, take it off, I wanna try again. Which is just peak comedy. Also, the analysis giving Nia one of the biggest and durest W's in Dead Bellow's history without even being present, by simply cancelling her own unexisted for a week straight just so that her and Simon could live happily for at least a week, meaning aka that means a superior spiral energy user like Simon could replicate that just fine, is just amazing. Best wife in the universe indeed. John Mitchell, You're Behind was potentially the best track art in the show's history. The super tengen toppa Gurren Lagann reaching out to the source wall, which contains the bodies and faces of various gunmen seen throughout Gurren Lagann, spiral power and galaxies flowing all around, freaking White Lantern Simon being made out of stardust, like the Gurren Lagann second ending, who then summons a rainbow giga drill that pierces the fucking Dead Bear logo itself, perfectly visualizing the fourth wall running power both possess, which even bled into the thumbnail itself at one point. Just immaculate, doesn't even begin to describe this artwork. Be proud. About the track itself, not gonna lie, I wouldn't have minded this track shining on its own light, but but it's basically a sequel / remix to Wheel of the Drill, which was an amazing welcome surprise of course. It's an epic rock track, fitting of the phenomenal cosmic heights both have surpassed, but instead of being hype all the way through like Wheel of the Drill, Spiral of Emotion starts out quiet and normal, much like Kyle and Simon did before the cosmic journeys began. But my god, when he kicks up, he kicks up. We get a beautiful combination of Gurren Lagann's opening, Sorayo Days, and the opening theme of Justice League Unlimited. Aka the other only animated property Kyle was ever in. The lyrics reflect their journeys, cosmic powers, willpower, fighting against self-doubt and despair, and yeah, it kinda just becomes Wheel of the Drill again at the end, which is not a bad thing in the slightest, but just it's more here thanks to the build-up I just mentioned, you know? The narrative theme of this fight is honestly far more interesting than you think. It centers around two aspects: the sources of their power and the levels of confidence. Kyle's self-doubts and anxieties were such a big part of his character that they literally took a form of their own thanks to the life equation, which Kyle couldn't fully master without being mentally overwhelmed. He had to learn to love himself, but he still had to actively fight his darker side, and he still couldn't master the life equation even then. He realized this was something he needed help for. Meanwhile, Simon recognized those darker parts of him as he went through the bad times, instead of having to constantly fight against them. And by always having his friends to rely on, he completed the journey and stood on his own feet. Simon had the will to control and grow his power. Kyle had the power, but not the will to control it. Kyle had an external power source he had to learn to control, but he had to learn to spread it for everyone's safety. In contrast, Simon is the source of his own power, constantly evolving to adjust and control it, which is beautifully showcased at the very end, with Kyle needing the ring to create a drill out of lantern constructs, whereas Simon creates one out of his own freaking blood, which is metal as fuck. In the end, Simon believed it is Simon that were just built different. External power versus internal power. I said it before and I say it again, with Kyle Rayner, it honestly gets kinda sad to a point. When fighting against the Super Tengen, the strongest being Kyle could imagine wasn't himself, but someone else. This works as a great meta-commentary on how DC writers never really allowed him to tap into his own limitless potential in the same way Simon bulldozed his way to his. Then there's also not being relevant since 2014, his biggest stamp on comic book history was his girlfriend being murdered, losing the G1 block 15-0, losing the fight 2, the Terminator using a render of a moment from the comics where he fails to resurrect the dead. I spent years rooting for this dude's downfall, but honestly, he's just as much of a goat as Simon is for putting up with how much he's been putting up for both in and out of the source material. This episode is obviously amazing, by the way. Easy 10.5 out of 10. If not a straight up 11, which if you're familiar with me, I gave that score to only 2 other episodes beforehand. But 10.5 is what I gave to Bowser vs. Eggman, so hey, that says a lot too. I'm gonna drink lots of water, you do the same. Hoko Krypton, hope you made your day slightly better.